we gonna make our own music?
I don't know. All right, what's up, YouTube? All right, this is the WWC method. This is what you can produce using it.
BRS, WWC, did it win? Did
The
it
final
fail?
episode.
Yeah, we're done. We're ready to tear down this E170. Look at it, though.
Man, we're going to tell you all kinds of new stuff. All right, man. How many years has it been?
We are coming up on 2 years-ish, 2 years, maybe a little over 2 years since we started the BRS WWC Hybrid series, or Hybrid Method. And man, have we learned a lot along the way. It's a tank trial. I don't know, we're gonna get to that. Like, some people have forgotten, I even forgot that this was supposed to be a tank trial. So success and failure is not a bad thing.
Yeah, coming from the tank trials from the ULMs that were here too.
Yeah.
All right, so today you're gonna hear like all of the things that went well, the difference between a tail, I guess, of two tanks, of this one, as well as the 750 out there. What we would do differently now, what we were even trying to achieve, and how the recipe, man, has evolved. But clearly, if you're looking at this one, success is on the horizon, right?
Yeah.
I think anybody who followed this method
can
with this
achieve
tank
this?
would say, you know what, man,
That's success.
this is for me.
Yeah, because all we have to do in this one now is keep trim. That's basic maintenance and trim.
It was the simplest possible tank there was. All right, so you're going to see that. You're also going to see some challenges, but I think it's the challenges where all of you are going to learn the most, because that's where,
all
we
of us learn the most. Yeah, failures.
Actually, you know, in fact,
And not failures, but
you know, we went over these things in the last few days, or actually a couple weeks, and what I've learned is the reason, man, we learn so much comes from all the different series we do. Like, so we learned a lot from the 160.
Yes.
We set up the 160, learned from the experience. We set from the all the BRS TV Investigates. We learned from the ULMs. We learned from the WWC method. We learned from the tank in my own house.
Yep.
And like every single time we set up tanks, man, we learn new challenges, share them, and evolve the conversation.
you know, that's a good point about this, especially like this BRS WWC series. Is when we were contemplating this series, we're like, man, are we going to do another build series? But they're valuable no matter how. I think every time we do one, even if it's a different approach, different method, tank trials, whatever it may be, yes, there is value in doing build series.
For me, anyway.
Yeah.
Like, hopefully you guys capture something out. If you do, let us know. Give us a thumbs up or something. Say it.
All right.
All right.
Where are we starting today?
Just a reminder, like, it's going to be hard because you go back 2 years, but a reminder of what we were actually trying to achieve with the WWC series. This is it, man. This business was producing epic results.
WWC.
Yes.
Yeah.
I walked in, I saw these epic tanks in their store.
Sold you.
And I'm like, I want some of this for me.
Yeah.
Right? Like, how do you guys do this? I want you to tell me, and then I want to share it with the world. And they're like, we'd love to.
Yeah, and I think that, I mean, anybody who follows WWC, even when I followed WWC and still do, the eye candy that they put out, you're like, how do you guys do this over and over and over and repeatable again, because they have, that was the secret sauce that we were trying to get.
Caveat, this is a business environment.
Yes.
It's open 7 days a week.
Good for them.
Nearly every day of the year. Has employees that are charged with tasks.
I don't have employees for my tank.
No. So at my house, or even here in many cases, you know, this is an environment where people have to work. They have vacations, they sleep, they have family, they have constant distractions, and it's a hobby, not a profession.
Right.
All right, so how do we meld the success that they've had in that business environment with one that you can have at your house? And you know, we spent so much energy, and I got to be honest. When I went back and watched them, I was like, it was super hard to decipher because we like spent all this time like, oh, this is everything that WWC does. This is everything that BRS does, and let's hybridize it together. Yeah. And then let's do an expensive one, a cheap one, and you know, a middle of the road one.
When you map this out on the board, it's just like, where is this thing going?
I couldn't. Honestly, I went back and I'm like, I can't follow this. There's so much information here, but it's really hard to follow. So today you're going to get some updates on it. All right. So again, the tank trial piece. Remember, we're talking about all of our experiences here, and we got, you know, endless calls and in-person meetings. So we put in so many phone calls with WWC to get all this information.
Yes.
They actually flew out here several times. We flew down there several times to get all this information collected for you guys. And so it's not what they do or what we do. It's what we believe we should do together.
Yeah. How do we take the business side and WWC success and the home hobbyist side and the success that we've had ourselves doing the home hobbyist thing, meld those two together into some kind of coherent recipe where, hey, you wanted a chocolate cake? Well, here's how to do it.
All right, so what you're going to see here now is there's a 5-star recipe. We made the recipe of the cake, the 5-star recipe that worked out super duper awesome. If you want to get a tank that looks like this one in 2 years, show the tank a little quick, real quick again. That one video you have.
One. This is as of today.
This is a video we shot today. If you want your tank to look like this in 24 months ish, like
sign me up.
Then you can say, oh, I should do this because it was super easy. It was one of the cheapest methods that we produced to do this. If you want this for yourself, this is this recipe.
This is the recipe.
All right.
And like any recipe, you have to follow it. But we'll get to that.
You do have to follow it. The other one, man, was a winner in the end, which is the 750 out there, and actually kind of the 160 as well.
The 160 to some degree, yeah.
But it was a lot harder path, man. It was not as fun. Required adaptions. And today you're going to see V2 of that, some changes that we would have made to that tank to make that one achieve what this did in the same period of time.
Yeah, that 750, it's coming into its own now, but man, riddled with issues, dynos and aptasia and all kinds of hurdles you didn't expect.
All right, we're going to show you the progression of that in just like maybe about a minute and a half.
Yep.
But just a reminder of like the core principles here. Now this is a cool thing, man, because like you think about like a method.
Yeah.
You know, methods, reefing methods are hot nowadays, right? Recipes and whatever.
Recipes.
There's some kinds of things, some things that like you violated and it's no longer that anymore at all.
It's your own.
Yeah, it's your own. This is now, you know, Ryan's method, Randy's method, your method is no longer the same.
Here's an analogy, right? When you're baking chocolate chip cookies, there are specific, you absolutely have to have ingredients. You have to have flour. You have to have sugar. You have to have butter, all this other stuff. But what if I put semi-sweet chocolate and you put dark chocolate in? That's a twist on the recipe that doesn't actually challenge the recipe.
Maybe, but
there's basic things like these core principles we're about to talk about that you have to have.
I'd go all the way to like if you left out the chocolate chips, it's no longer a chocolate chip cookie. It's a cookie. It's still a cookie. Yeah. All right. So anyway, core principles, man. We'll breeze through them real quick here. If you violate these again, it's not the WWC method. It's bare bottom in their case. It's more stable long term and it filters way better. No question.
Yes.
I did it at home. I can tell you. I watched all the food flush off the bottom and never got collected in the sand. I have sand now, and there's all kinds of reasons I love sand now, but like filtration is not one of them because all the little food particles now collect in the sand. So a totally different thing. Nutrition and protein is the conversation, not nutrients. Not nitrate and phosphate.
No.
Nutrition, protein, and all of the things that go into producing coral tissue, not nitrate and phosphate, which is just fertilizer. All right, flow is more important than lighting is a core principle. Lighting, tuned with a tool and then left alone, it's not a toy, core principle. Water changes, 10% a week, core principle. Simple and stable, this isn't a toy. Set it up and leave it alone, just keep it stable.
Yep.
All right. Simple meaning also not all that other garbage that you can put on. Like don't put every last thing on their toy because it makes it more complex. All of those things, there's other recipes out there to make an awesome reef tank, but to this one, those are the core principles.
Yep.
All right. Okay, so let's show the path that we had for this one first.
The E170?
Yeah, I asked him to Dave to put some shots together here of 0, 6 months, like 18 months, and 24 months.
E170.
Oh,
the small one. There we go.
There we go.
There we go.
Okay, so this is what it looked like.
This is where
day
it started.
One. All right, so it was bare bottom.
But this rock came from?
From the old ULM.
Yeah, the ULM.
Yeah, so this rock had been in a tank for 1.5 years, an established reef tank, but that's what it looked like day one.
There's a shrimp floating around in there.
Yeah, 6 months later, has corals on it. We did the 4-month cycle, so this is like 2 months after adding corals. You know, they're in there. They're not doing anything special.
No.
But 6 months later, boom.
In a year.
Yeah.
This is how far we got. That's successful to me still.
Okay, yeah, dude. Like if I can get here and from a year of putting in corals, I'm feeling pretty good, pretty damn good.
Path.
All right, two years. This is where we are today. Boom.
This is about a month or so ago. Oh, no, this is actually like almost this is still about a year or a little after a year. Now we get to today.
Okay, this is today.
Oh, look at that.
Yeah,
and it's been trimmed 100 times.
I don't think anybody would be disappointed with that progression path, man.
To some degree, we could say it's the best looking tank in the office.
Yeah, dude, this is a small tank that filled out really fast. It's an all-in-one tank. It doesn't have anything complex, just BRS 2-part, the little hybrid with some little bit of the Part C in there.
Water changes.
Yeah, water changes, old school lights.
Simple.
Plug them on, plug them in, nothing fancy, man. It was super simple.
Epitome of simple and stable.
Like hang on skimmer, man. I was like, no, I don't know. Like you don't need anything fancy to be able to pull this off. So you'll hear some other things in here why this works so well.
So the recipe works, obviously. Here it is.
You're gonna hear why this recipe works so well in this specific tank. All right, so now let's watch the 750. Now keep in mind, this 750 here, this was the expensive one.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
This one had all the gadgets. If I had infinite budget, this is what I would do. And there's gonna be tons of people out there laughing, like, oh my God, you spent all that money and look what happened. There was a really distinct reason here. You're gonna learn it in today's journey as well.
Yep.
Day one, this is what it looks like.
So there's water in there now.
So this is that shelf rock, you know, the Marco shelf rock with a foundation rock. It's dry though. Never ever seen life of any kind.
So the cycle approach on this one was dump some bottles of Microbacter 7 and some other bacterial products and send it on the 4-month cycle.
Boom. All right. Well, 6 months. Ugh.
Ugly brown.
Yeah, I mean,
we were told by Josh to embrace the ugly brown because it's inevitable and you'll make it through the other side.
So what he was actually saying though that ugly brown is embrace it was referring to live rock though, and we applied it here because a lot of people are just like, well, it's live rock. Dry rock is what people have available.
Yeah,
it's very difficult to get dry or live rock, and it's very expensive, and so. And often comes with all kinds of pests depending on where you get it from. So anyway, trying to apply this with live rock here, or dry rock rather.
Right.
And it's all full of cyano, it's full of, water's cloudy, bacterial blooms. Let's go to the next one. Took us a lot longer to put corals in it, but now there are.
Okay, so this is maybe the
6
year
months later.
mark or so, and you can see coralline outbreak. The whole bottom is covered in coralline. The rocks are all purple. This was dry bone dry white rock. So it looked like bones, or that white rock, and now it's covered in purple. So feels like we're having success here, but at a year in, this looks nothing like the E170.
Okay, so the reason for that is because we're having struggles here. We're having dinos are breaking out in this thing. We're having that cloudy water.
Aptasia starts filling the tank.
Aptasia's going like crazy. We're having challenge after challenge after challenge with this tank. And you're seeing it in the growth of the coral.
Yeah.
The coral's just sitting there stunted.
Nubs, not doing anything.
They're not doing what this thing is doing. And so the short little nubbins are surviving, but not growing. And I bet you a lot of people out there are like, oh man, it's me too.
So that first year was riddled with issues, and then we finally take a year getting out of that hole, and here we are today.
So hopefully, is there a close-up of this one too? Okay, in a second.
Yeah.
All right, so now the corals are starting to grow, and they look a little smaller in this because this is a bigger tank, you know?
Yeah.
And they are smaller than this for sure.
Some of the colonies are starting to table out. We're on the verge of this growth explosion, and this tank can fill in the next year. This will be a completely different tank, I imagine, fully grown out.
This tank is where the other one was at in a year.
Yes. So we got there a year early on the E170.
Now, in one more year, this tank is going to look like this one, but a much grander scale.
Oh, I bet.
So you'll see it. We'll update you in a year on this specific one. But man, was it a lot slower. Man, was it harder and so many more challenges.
2 years to accomplish what we did in the E170 in 1 year.
And all these challenges were avoidable. You're going to hear today how. You don't have to go through the same problem we did.
Aptasia,
and there's a bunch of them. There's a lot of different touch points in how the recipe weaves together. And now I have a better understanding as to why in this trial here, this one, awesome, that one, challenging.
Yeah.
All right, so.
Cool.
All right. So what we did is we actually went back through all the episodes and looked at them and what was the thing we changed or whatever.
What was the major pull from these ones?
And we're not going to bore you with all of them
No.
because we only picked out the ones that actually mattered. And so we're going to fly all the way to episode 7, which is biofiltration, right?
Probably
or week 7.
The biggest topic in this entire series went after the fact.
Okay, so you guys, I'm not going to get too belabored on this because you guys have all heard it before, but live rock was the key differentiator.
For sure.
Live rock here.
There's something to be said about that maturity of rock that's been in that environment, has been cured, mature, they call, lived the life. I think that ULM SPS tank was up for about a year and a half before we even tore it down to put the rock in here. So we've got a jump on the biofiltration for a year and a half of rock that's been in there.
Not a coincidence that one's about a year behind.
Yeah, it makes sense, right?
Okay, so also this part, so there's no question. If I was going to do the hybrid method here, which achieved the same results with a bare bottom tank, which is a core premise, live rock or bust. I wouldn't do it any other way.
Right. One of those core principles. If you want this success, get live rock. Find a way.
I would.
Otherwise, don't follow the recipe.
If I want a bare bottom, I'd do live rock every time.
I don't think I'd follow the recipe.
Okay.
If I couldn't.
Now I'm going to say that with a caveat. There is something worth exploring here.
Yeah, which we haven't done yet.
It's those bio bricks that they're like ceramic bricks.
Yeah, Brightwell, marine piers, that type of stuff. Yeah.
Yep, we used them in that tank, but here's the thing. It isn't just about surface area. The surface area has to actually be populated.
Yeah, there's got to be something on there.
So it is possible that if you used a bunch of those bio bricks that had already been established in another system, you might be able to pull off dry rock, bare bottom. I don't know.
One could see the other.
I'd be willing to try it for myself because I'm a sacrificial lamb for you guys. I wouldn't recommend it.
How about this? We actually are trying this to some degree as we speak. Because Jen is setting up the 900 XXXL.
She's using
she's using live rock now? But she has a whole bunch of ceramic media that she brought from her shop that has been seeded and been sitting there for a long time.
But she's also going to use live rock now. So, but we're going to find out eventually that I answer that question. But right now, if anybody's asking me that wanted
to do this again,
best of my belief,
you want to
use
follow
live
the
rock
recipe?
or dry rock,
Use
or with the
rock.
bare bottom. All right. So the next thing was filtration.
Episode 8.
This is like, episode 8. This really matters because this has 0 filtration on it, and that one has tons.
I mean, basically 0.
Yeah.
A skimmer that we don't even really use.
Barely. Yeah. Okay, so filtration means filter socks, filter pad. It means the protein skimmer. Well, water change came up later.
But
yeah. So all the other stuff, the refugium, all of those things, that's the filtration. All of the ways to get stuff out of the water.
And WWC's method, of simple and stable. They have filter pads that they change out, and they do. The whole bare bottom and kicking that stuff up. But for the majority of their filtration, it was large external skimmers and filter pads.
Okay, this tank right here, the winner, right, had just a hang-on back skimmer. It's a skimmer that comes with this. It's not really hang on the back, but it's about the same kind of quality.
Yep.
And is, like you said, barely used. And doesn't have anything else, man. There's no filter sock on there.
Nothing gets changed out.
There's nothing, man.
Nah.
That's it, dude. And then in the 750 now, we got the roller mat, which is like pulling all the stuff out in real time.
Yeah.
We got this big fancy Regal skimmer that's external.
that recirculating.
Has its own fancy DC pump. It's tuned. Super awesome.
Yeah.
Right. All right. And that one didn't work as good.
Nuh-uh.
All that gear, man, didn't produce a better result.
Spent all that money on the dream, unlimited budget, and actually this worked out better.
Okay, this is an important part of the journey. Why the same things don't work for everybody the same way, especially when you deviate
from the
recipes.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
If I use twice as much baking soda is great, man, helps leaven stuff. But if I use twice as much, it's not great anymore.
No,
I totally changed the whole matrix. Okay, so one of the key things with the filtration over at WWC was heavy in, heavy out. Meaning they're feeding the hell out of the corals and the fish.
Every hour on the hour.
And when we say every hour on the hour, there's
Literally.
a timer. There's a timer that somebody has to
Kitchen
set,
timer.
goes
Egg timer.
off.
Ding.
Whoever's closest to it needs to go grab food and put it in the tank every hour on the hour.
Religiously.
Does anybody do that at home?
No.
No.
I mean, I could have my auto feeder do that, but that's something different. Yeah. They have their own, and they had their DIY blend. So I mean, it's a complete nutritional balanced, food that they're feeding them. So I mean, there's all different types of proteins and fats and stuff going in there. Okay. Amino acids and stuff too.
So in our environment here, I would not call it as heavy in for two reasons. One, we're not doing it by the hour, and two, that tank out there, the 750, ended up getting massive aptasia.
Massive.
And you just can't dump food in when you got that kind of explosion of aptasia, or you're just going to keep fueling it.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So we had to scale back the amount of food to treat the issue that's happening in the tank.
And now we've deviated from the recipe. We've made that alteration.
Okay, so now we don't have heavy in, but we have actually low in, heavy out.
That
doesn't work. Recipe totally jacked.
Yep.
Now, right?
Yep.
Okay. In this one, we have what I call medium in, because we're feeding it the KZ stuff, and we're feeding it all the food and everything. But there's just like this kind of hang on back skimmer is the only thing.
Yeah. So medium in, low out, or medium in, semi-medium out.
Yeah, like a different matrix that kind of caught up there. Now, what you'll find also is auto water change saves the day.
Yeah.
Because
we'll
that is the thing that really makes up for all of that, so that the nutrients are continually rising. But filtration, man, no. Okay. All right.
Oh, well, to your point here also. So we had to adapt, but if we had identified that at the time, we would have removed the filtration.
Yeah. Now, looking back, exactly that. Looking back on it, if I could do something differently on that tank, when I recognized that I wasn't going to put as much food in it as the method called for, because I couldn't, because the aptasia is blowing up, I would have taken some of the filtration
back.
Roller mat out, filter socks out.
Get back to a balance of what comes in and what goes out.
Yeah, I probably would have done that. I would have maybe tuned the skimmer or turned it off even. The big thing will be just making sure I don't have constantly elevating nitrate and phosphate. But
with the external skimmer that we have on that thing, you should be able to adjust that to some degree too. Yeah.
All right. All right. Next one. It was flow, and this was something that we just got good. Really nailed it on both of these things. So I wanted to share it, but again, they feel
the core principle for them was flow is more important.
You know what? I'm gonna reiterate one thing he said, because when he said it to me the first time, I didn't really get it, and so I want to share with you now as I understand it. The first time I talked to Josh and Victor over there, I was like, all right, well, so what kind of turnover do you guys do? It's like, I had this list of questions, whatever. And like 50x, 100x, and he's like, we don't bother with the X. I'm like, yeah, I understand that nobody here does either, but at the same time, the people watching this want to know an X just to ballpark keep me, give me some information, man. I need to understand a little bit, right? Because just kind of using expertise to judge it doesn't help somebody who's asking that question. It only helps the expert that already knows, right? But the one piece he did really capture, man, when he pointed around is, it isn't just two pumps, on one end each side, aimed directly at each other, creating turbulence in the center. There's dead spots everywhere, all over the tank, right? So you've got to consider where the dead spots are and get flow to them. And if you can use pumps that aim or pumps that can be hidden, use that. But flow is the way that these animals will get rid of all of the toxic byproducts of photosynthesis, and it's also the way that they get nutrients to and through their tissue, getting through that boundary area. If you don't do that, especially in high lighting, bad news.
Well, in hindsight too, now that the more we're understanding about flow and the uses for the different flow patterns, we just did a buyer's guide type episode on the power heads, and 50 times to 100 times, assigning a number to the turnover in your display is not the same. Like 100 times for you with your tank versus 100 times for me in my tank, not the same.
Well, also 100 times in a super wide angle cone that only goes a foot, or 100 times shooting as a laser beam across the tank.
Yeah,
totally
different. Two different things.
So that is a good point here, because what I just said was two pumps aimed at each other, one on each side of the tank, is bad, not a good idea, because it's going to create dead spots. So listen to all those words in there, because actually the successful model here is two pumps on the other side.
Aimed at each other.
Okay. But what this does in this cube shape with these two gyres, is it created a gyre that keeps flow in almost everywhere in the tank, and then the gyre reverses and goes the other direction and keeps flow everywhere, and then it hits in the middle and creates turbulence. So in this specific case, 2 pumps using the gyres absolutely produced the desired result. And when one of them stopped working, things started dying.
Yes.
So once they started to slow down, and there was a point in which like the maintenance hadn't been done on time, right? And these things do require a lot more maintenance than most pumps.
Yeah, otherwise you lose flow dramatically.
Really fast. So with these things, though, it didn't get in a while, and it slowed down dramatically, and all of a sudden you started to see all the tissue loss on the coral. So again, like nothing else had changed in the tank, and all of a sudden we didn't have adequate flow, and all of a sudden like corals are suffering, they're losing tissue and dying. Get the flow fixed, maintenance the pumps, all of a sudden everything comes back immediately. All right, so in the larger tank that's not a cube though, what really worked well for me was all of those MP40s and 60s on there, which you had the 2 on the front like you do, the opposing ones.
2 main current MP60s, yeah.
Then you had one down on the bottom, which really flushes all the garbage off, especially from behind, right? And then one on the top that also goes behind the aquascape, you know, and building that aquascape specifically so that flow could get behind it and not just have it turn into the tank's toilet behind there.
Yeah. So it's funny that, again, here we are with the inexpensive version with the inexpensive pumps in a smaller, inexpensive tank, doing better than that one out there. But when it comes to flow, like if you got something you got to keep in mind with the size and shape of your tank and your aquascape is what it's going to actually cost you with this recipe, or what to consider when you're buying these pumps and how to get it right. Like a 6-foot tank, probably more challenges and hurdles to get flow right than a 2-foot tank.
I will say in that tank with that application, especially with having the pumps down on the bottom, like you can with MP40s, you can put any pump on the bottom, but you're gonna have a big old cord going all the way down to the bottom of the tank.
There you go.
So the MP40 can just go right on the bottom, right, and not have all that cord. Like it's one thing to have a cord at the top, but like dangling all the way through the bottom, and most people don't like that.
Yeah, agreed.
Okay, what you do see in that one is the bottom of the tank is way cleaner than this one. It definitely keeps the stuff flushed and on. But both of these solutions worked really well. But again, what I learned from Josh and Victor was that it's not about an X. It's about getting flow to the areas that we have neglected in the past and find the right solution. And this is one of those things where the solution was right from the beginning.
Yeah. Awesome.
All right. So, next one. This one is one of the things actually I debated pretty heavily with both Victor and Josh up front, right? Actually we got this one's later on. So the next one's lighting. This one's actually interesting.
Yeah, this one is to me is the epitome of simple and stable. And this, I think Victor has said this from the front. This is what the advice that Victor had really struck a chord with me was, stop messing with your lights. Set it and never, ever, ever, ever touch it again for any reason. Unless one burns out. Then get a new one and put it on the same schedule.
It's not a toy.
It's not a toy.
It will adapt.
That's exactly what he said.
Adapt to the energy that you provide it, but not if you keep screwing with it.
Don't touch it.
All right, that's why we set it up with a tool. We use a par meter, we use a known spectrum, and then we leave it alone.
Yeah.
It isn't like, let's just flip some switches. It kind of looks like, I don't know, that looks like 300 par to me. Yeah, whatever, man. Nobody knows. Nobody can do that.
Or in a month or 2 months, and like, man, I'm just not getting the growth or the other thing I'm doing. I'm going to adjust my lights. No, adjust everything else first, because the lights are critical to keep just fingers off.
This is also a dollar bill question too. So, this option here, some T5s with a Kessel. One of the lower cost options out there, especially compared to what we did out there. And I got to tell you, this is just my go-to over and over and over again. Kessel combined with T5s. Now I've been at home combining with some LED strips, but like getting that fill light where the light is larger than the object you're trying to illuminate, so it wraps the coral over, and you can see we don't got any growth problems. There's shadow problems. Nothing's dying from being shadowed, even stuff that looks like it should be. So we're getting light from all over the place, keeping everything, wrapped in light. This was actually an interesting thing that Terrence actually said to me the other day, is if your coral is shadowed half, it's only getting half of the energy that it needs to survive.
Ah.
And I'm like, wow, man, it's really interesting to think about it that way because, like, you think about par. I want to get 350 par, to the coral. Well, it's kind of like that DLI thing, like daylight interval. Well, what if I got 200 par for, a little bit longer
12
period?
hours or 500 par for 3 hours.
Okay, but what if I got the perfect 300 par, but covered up half the coral and it's not getting the light anymore?
It's got to distribute that energy from the light, from the shadowed side to the non-shadowed side and back and forth.
Well, think about like a solar panel. The solar panel is only getting half of the panel exposed. It's going to produce half the energy. Coral, same thing. All right. So at least for the analogies of our purposes.
So lighting on the E170, last point here before we see what did the 750. This is, again, one of the epitomes of simple and stable. Plug in T5s on a timer, plug in your Kessel, set it with the Kessel logic, and everything's on a timer. Comes on, turns off. Comes on, turns off. Never touch it again. I don't have anything. It's plug and play. Yeah, done.
I don't know.
Success.
I know people like toys. I actually want a thriving reef tank. That's what this produces. I don't know. It's the same thing we use on the 162. All right, so
750.
750. There's lots of people out there that don't want to use T5s anymore, right? So you're going to use LED technology to achieve it, and so we put this same thing, light source that is big as the object you're trying to illuminate, but in this case, 10 XR15s.
Bunch of little multiple ones with diffusers on there, which did create we're lighting from almost every angle that you could approach in that tank. It was
expensive.
It was very expensive. It was expensive and it was ugly to have. For the aesthetically, this big giant rat tail or elephant tail of cord.
It's like a conduit.
It was hanging off. You could probably run it all in like a 1.5-inch pipe, maybe. But there was a lot of cord.
That cord that we had there could supply a small city. Man. It was a giant cord. When you combine all of them together, and it's a lot of maintenance trying to get them all hooked up and stay together and all this stuff. I don't know.
Technology improves.
Okay, so G5s come out, right? And so in our initial review of the G5, we looked at it and it was like, yeah, it's good, man. The spread's way better, blah blah blah, and but
ask the question.
I asked myself the question: would I replace my G4s? And I said, you know what? I'm not doing it on the 750, so no, I wouldn't replace the G4s. And how could I possibly suggest to anybody else that I'm gonna if I'm not gonna do it myself?
That's true. But
so we didn't.
We didn't. And then we did.
Well, so then we explored the thing again, a year later.
We tested the hell out of the G5s. We ran it through, all of our investigates tests, and then come into, this cost per par, this, spacing, all of these things, and found that these actually can perform with half the cost almost.
Yeah, so what we did then is we found that the light actually has the widest of all the lights we tested. The spread was the best.
For the form factor?
Out of all the lights that we tested, none of them produced as even of a spread, even that 2x2 grid of T5s.
Yeah.
I mean, even when I talked to the team over at Ecotech, I'm like, you're not going to believe what we just got. And I told them, would you believe, you produced this light yourself, would you believe that your light has a more even distribution of light coming out of a box this big than a grid of T5s that's the size of the tank?
No.
And they're like, no way.
Yeah, here's the numbers.
Yeah, way, man, it did. And then not only that, but there was an improvement on the blending of the LEDs, using a new lens design they had.
There's the Mobius, which made it a hell of a lot easier to access than our other 10 lights. But the Radion with the blues, creating a schedule was easy, or creating a usable spectrum range was easy. Turn them all up to 100% and adjust the overall intensity.
And then during that same thing, we found that, and this is the other absurd thing, and you wouldn't even believe this unless you watched the episode that we did on this. We tried to get the value of cost per par out of those things, right? Meaning, let's take the total average par of all the lights at a specific depth, at the top of 6 inches, mounted where they're supposed to be mounted, and we found that it was of 20 some lights that we sell here. It was like
In the
number
top 5.
I think it was 3 and 4.
Yeah.
Of the cheapest cost per par was the XR15 and XR30.
Yeah. That's like a no-brainer to put this thing on.
Nowhere, most people would say the Radions are amongst the best. Like a lot of people would say that, and if you gave it to me for free, I would use it, even if I'm an advocate. Like I don't want to spend that money free for sure. I use it, right?
Yeah.
Most people would say that is the light to beat out there from an LED, module form factor. Mm-hmm. Almost nobody would say it also represents the greatest value.
No.
But then when you do the price per par thing, it's like, well, why wouldn't I say that?
Yeah. It's
I don't know,
in the numbers.
So here's the deal. We tore off after doing that. We're like, man, you know what? We were wrong. These are significantly better than those other ones, and we are struggling, and we've been struggling for more than a year. It's time to try some new stuff.
Yeah.
So we replaced all 10 of the XR15s in a grid with just 4 XR30s.
Blues.
Way better success.
Already.
Yeah. You could argue, was it some other changes we made? I have no idea. Did the tank just come into itself? I don't know. But not only did when we switched over to the 4s, did we not see a setback, which you often see with the changing out lights? It absolutely does better after.
Yeah. Well, and a key component to that, dialing in that light, and actually what we saw, you and I hand measured all of the tanks at WWC with a par meter to get this understanding. Okay, so they're creating this success with the flow. They're creating it with the way they feed. They're creating it with their filtration approach. They're creating it with this. So where does that bring their lights and their lighting? And so we tested all their tanks with a par meter all over the place, and kind of developed that 250 to 350 pocket. If you take all of the averages of all the spots that we tested in like the WWC 900, the 500, it's about 250 to 350 par on average across the whole entire tank. And then they set it that way and never touched it again, and here's what came out of it.
And if you don't think it matters, you're wrong, because Josh is like showing us corals. He's like, yeah, this one used to be in about 250, and when we moved it to the 350, it did way better. And this one, actually the opposite. This one did way better. And then when I looked over at Dana Riddle's, he has this like collection of corals. He's gone to people's houses, he's measured the par and different colors, and collected a massive amount of data. And you can definitely see the orange ones do best in these different par range. Or I shouldn't say best. I should say, for some reason,
visually better.
Most of the orange ones are always in this range.
For
some magical reason, across like lots and lots of tanks, the green ones always are in this range. So,
well, and having an idea, mapping out the par in your own tank allows you the opportunity to make those adjustments, with some sort of knowledge of where you're putting it. So if you set your lights, you have mapped out your par, you have an idea of where par is in very specific areas, and now all of a sudden, a year later or so, you have this little frag up there that's still a little frag, it's not doing anything. Yeah, you know what, maybe it's time to bust that off and put that in a 200 zone. I already know where that 200 zone is.
Especially if everything else is doing good and that one isn't.
Yeah.
So we have this tendency to just try to toy with things.
The whole light.
Hobby.
Yeah, I don't want to change the sun. I just want to change where this one is in the sun.
You gave me the ability on my phone. Why am I not using it? No, actually, if everything else is doing well, don't change the light.
No.
Change the position of the coral, and that's what they're doing over there at WWC.
Awesome.
All right, so
that was lighting.
That was lighting. All right. The 4-month cycle. This one is going to be big.
Woo.
Right? So I'm going to take a total turnabout, and this one's going to be based not on necessarily fact, but my current belief structure. Do whatever you want with this one. I was talking about it with a friend last night too.
Yeah.
And the acknowledgement is nobody really knows the answers to these questions, but you learn more and more and more, and you apply it and to produce you can. Okay. So 4-month cycle. Sounds really, really good, right? It's like patience. It's all this other, stuff that we've been told all these times, and I believe it.
It's not following ammonia, and then there's the magic 1-month mark, and ammonia's gone, and now I'm done with my cycle. No,
yeah.
It's a little more than that.
The cycle again. I'm getting past this ammonia thing. We're talking about the tank is ready for corals,
yeah,
and does well.
Yep.
Right. It's this tank instead of that one. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So in that frame of mind, when he told us about the 4-month cycle, again, they have so many bins of live rock there that they use for these big tanks. He's referring it to the experience of this, right? Okay, so in that spirit, I totally agree. Live rock, if you go and do a 4-month cycle without the lights on, what you're gonna do is take all of that like biome that's on the rock right now.
It's the good stuff you want.
Yep. And you're gonna let it really do its job.
out.
It's gonna spread throughout the tank. It'll spread to wherever it needs to go in the filtration. And what it won't do is take all those things that are very opportunistic and live off of photosynthetic energy. Because the photosynthetic energy, those things can grow so much faster than the things that have to scavenge for organics.
Right,
you know?
right.
So, like, I totally get it with live rock. With dry rock, I mean, we've said this so many times now that you should get your dry rock and let it soak for so long. This is based on my own personal experience recently, and I cannot tell you that it's true, but I can tell you what my personal belief is now. My personal belief now is I have to look back at why my tank struggled so hard.
Yep.
And it was dry rock, bare bottom, and it just got overwhelmed with garbage in the beginning. By the way, now, awesome.
Yeah, now it's coming along.
But overwhelmed with garbage, and then it was really, really hard to beat, man. Like at one point, I'm like, man, I should reboot this thing.
Yeah.
This is just, whatever I'm doing just isn't working.
Yeah.
Man. I've never seen it this bad.
I don't know. We felt the same with the 750.
Yeah,
At multiple
it's true,
points.
man. Dry rock here again. Okay, and I cycled that rock in my house, dude, for like 6-7 months, man.
Yeah,
it was
just
forever.
Letting it run with no lights.
Yeah, just like wasn't in a hurry. I didn't care.
It's a 7-month
I'm
cycle.
feeling like rock and roll, man. I turn the lights on. I'm like, yeah, dude, this is gonna be no problem. I've been running this tank for this long.
Yeah.
Okay, this is what I currently believe happened, right? Okay, I believe in this biome thing now.
Yeah.
Partially because it makes our conversational sense, but B, then I sent out that DNA testing thing, about all the different things that are living in my tank, and I found out that it's totally out of whack. Like, once you hold a piece of paper that shows what's actually in the tank, it's set up by DNA sequencing, it's kind of undeniable. You're like, oh my God, that was jacked. And but it was like a picture into a window, man. It was largely just theory before, and now oh no, right?
Yeah, not diverse.
Okay, so this is what I think happens. You put the dry rock in, you let it go forever, and whatever opportunistic organism happens to enter the tank will now take the hold.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, and so if you're using...
Not necessarily the things you want.
No, like if you're using a sterile environment, because doing dry rock, bare bottom, no seeded, ceramic media or other biofiltration, and you're just going to dump a few bottles and stuff in of bacteria and get it going, you are opening the doors, laying down the red carpet for all that nasty, fast-growing, fast-replicating bad stuff to take over first.
And then I'm going to turn the lights on and watch
Fuel
the photosynthetic garbage, to totally take over the tank.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, all the things that I want really haven't been introduced to the tank yet.
Yeah.
Okay. This is why, personally, I probably will soak the dry rock just to get garbage off of it, like whatever it is on there, dust and all that stuff for a week or something, maybe in fresh water. But after that, I will not wait 4 months because I had to think back, why did all of the Insta tanks that we've done here not have any of these problems?
Yeah, true.
I mean, so many of them, and this is the thought process that I have. On that dead surface, it's sterile. We're starting at ground zero. And then in the, right away, Insta tank it, I glue all of these corals onto the base, right?
Yeah.
The corals have all of that biome
They
on
might as
them,
well be
right?
live rock, yeah.
In some sense.
Yeah.
And then they're going to spread it onto the surface of the rock. And the reason that it's going to do it effectively is because there's nothing there that's already established and has to fight back against.
So it's like those nasty, pesty type things are at the same starting point as your healthy, thrive, the things, the good stuff that you do want, and they both start the race at the same time. Whereas in a sterile environment, dry rock, nothing to seed it, it's got this much a head start on the good stuff.
Well, I would actually say that they're not starting at the same rate because I got the sterile rock, I got all the garbage I don't want, right? But I got the corals here, but by putting all the corals on that rock,
Boom.
I've actually given it the leg up,
Yeah, there you
right? Now those things can buy, I already got $1 million, so $1 million becomes $2 million, becomes $4 million, whatever. Well, the other thing is still trying to split from 1 to 2.
Yeah.
So
major head start.
Yeah, major head start. And that was the other thing, like in my own tank, where like part of the reason I was thinking about just restarting is like, how is that biome ever going to beat all the garbage?
It's already in there. Yeah.
How is it going to win? And I'll just give you. I meant to do a little video at home.
Eventually, it does.
What happened when I added. So for those of you who've been paying attention, in my home, when I added that ocean direct sand, which in theory has like sand bacteria out of the ocean,
Just
breathable bag.
Scoop it, put it in a bag, and send it.
We'll test it and let you know how much that materializes. But I'm going to tell you this: what happened is it was super dusty, and so the sand covered the entire rock surface because it was all slimy and had all this algae weird stuff on it, So the sand turned it all white. And I was going to blow it off. I'm like, you know what?
Just let it go.
If it's true
that the bacteria is on those particles.
Bacteria's on those particles.
You just spread it.
I now just gave a mechanism for it, A, to kind of like starve out the light because it's now covering it.
Yeah.
And now there is like the troops came in a quantity that maybe can overwhelm it. And no question, man, the day after, the tank was so much better than it was the day before, and so on. In a week, man, it was like, man, I know where I'm going. In 2 weeks, this tank's awesome. Right? It was
interesting.
For a fight that, like, if you watch my Facebook and it's like, man, this guy, poor suffering me. and like, I just don't know what's going on, So I can't tell you any of this is fact. We can only share experiences with each other.
That's true.
I will tell you, I believe that in the biome thing now, all the way, it's a bunch of stuff that you'll never touch or know exactly if you've done it right. But I believe in finding ways to add that biome to the tank, and don't let that tank build up all the negative stuff for 4 months beforehand.
Yeah.
Now again, WWC using live rock, biome's already complete.
It's there. Yeah.
It's already done.
So plausible.
Yeah,
And
very.
How could it not be that? So it's so plausible.
If my grandma asked me what to do, man, I would tell her to do this.
Yeah.
Somebody that I owe my life to, man. I would say, this is what I believe wholeheartedly.
Here's how to do this.
All right, so 4-month cycle, just to reiterate here, live rock, absolutely, I totally understand why you're going to be able to get some of the photosynthetic opportunistic stuff back down. The rest of it really, getting established and continuing that, getting some of the gunk out of it as well. Dry rock, I think I'd start it right away, throw corals on it and call it a day.
Yep.
In fact, this is one thing, man. We've talked about whether or not fish stores should sell like live rock and whatever.
Yeah.
This is something, like if I was a fish store, I would go out and do this today because everyone should buy one of these. I would stack up those marine pier or the Brightwell bricks in an established system, like the ones that have been in there for a year. Every time you take one out, I'd put a new one in.
Yep.
I would sell those biome bricks to every single person that has dry rock in their tank to help that 10 billion little organisms beat out the ones or twos and the optimal.
The people that you're selling that stuff to, higher percentage of success.
I mean, we saw it in the like those test tanks we did with the
the flow tanks with the
ORA corals.
ORA corals.
Just threw that brick in the bottom. Never had any issues.
Yeah.
Now we didn't have any rock in that tank, so it's a little different. But
Yeah.
all we did is throw one brick in there and zero or near zero mortality of
yeah.
136 corals. The tank's just thrown up day one. Bare bottom, never had any issues, just as BioBrick. So if you're a fish store, man, I think that would be one of the most beneficial things you could do for your customers is get those things set up so somebody could come in and add biome to the tank right away.
Jen's on top of it.
She should.
She swapped out some new ones for the ones she brought from the shop.
All right, elements. This one's really actually kind of an interesting thing too. So this is major, minor, and trace elements.
Yeah.
We had 2 solutions here just to bring you up to date. This one here is just the BRS Pharma along with Part C from Tropic Marine. And once it got filled out, we added the A and K to the two parts as well.
Like they suggest.
Really simple, really cheap.
It's trace elements, major, minor elements, and would you say that it works? I mean,
yeah, I don't know. Like if you show the picture again of all the color here. So like,
okay, here guys,
you know,
would you
this
say
is
this
this is
works?
the video we shot today. You know, if you're looking for better than this from major, minor, and trace elements, tell me what you're looking for. I don't know. So go ahead. But this was really inexpensive.
Yep.
And produced this result over 2 years. So I don't know. Good. All right. So in the 750, we used a calcium reactor for a couple of reasons, but one of them I think was selfish, like just a desire for cool factor.
Yeah, gear. Well, and if you look at WWC, they were using calcium reactors, but there's a different reason that they chose calcium reactors over us. You know, for them, it's the most efficient thing that they have for the store, cost effective.
So if you talk to Victor, you know, the like one of the founding fathers of WWC, he will tell you he loves and adores Kalkwasser, right? Kalkwasser, his #1 favorite thing because it keeps the pH up.
Yep.
It's really inexpensive and easy to use.
Yeah, easy.
Right?
We've got barrels.
Two-part, yeah, really gets it, especially for a home tank because the two-part is really easy to use as well.
Takes you a long way.
It's just like at scale, it gets expensive. So if you're gonna like set up an 800-gallon tank, man, this is gonna be an
two parts. Yeah,
so
not your best choice.
So for like if you're gonna have an 800-gallon tank, calcium reactor is the most cost-effective solution, and the Kalkwasser drum of water for that starts to get ridiculous too. And they actually did both at the same time. But that is one important part, and we're going to hear this video someday in the future of like the forgotten additive Kalkwasser, because I just put it on my own tank and I'm super happy that I did. Kalkwasser is one of the best additives out there. It's cheap. It doesn't have any salinity issues. There's no excess chloride or sodium in the water. It raises the pH significantly. And it's just really, really easy to use.
Yeah.
And so I don't know why it got overlooked so much, but you should hear that. Now, the calcium reactor, we put it on here for cool factor, which was the wrong thing, because really simple and stable is the core thing here.
Two-part or Kalkwasser?
Yeah, and we got this kind of elaborate calcium reactor with these dosing pumps and stuff.
Which we didn't even need anyway, because these corals are in the 750 are hardly sucking anything up too. So I mean, you don't need this massive monstrosity. We could have got so far with with just a reservoir Kalkwasser.
Yeah, I don't know. If I could do it again, at a home level, it either would have incorporated the Kalkwasser or I would have done exactly what I did here, which is just BRS Pharma with the Part
Tropic
C,
Marin.
Tropic Marin. Because it worked and it's simpler, and I don't have all that stuff. Because we've had like dosing pumps die more than once now. The like continuous duty dosing pumps have worn out. So, I don't think I'd do that. In fact, if I'm being straight, I don't think I would put any item on my tank that I know is intentionally going to lower the pH in a world where I'm trying to grow coral faster, because those things are very counterintuitive.
Right. Well, and I mean, depending on the calcium reactor media and some of the tests that we've been doing, you can have calcium reactor media that puts up to like almost 800 times the amount of phosphate than what's in your fresh salt water.
That was actually an interesting thing. I didn't get it. When I was there, they shared they used the phosphate E from Brightwell to pull out all the excess phosphate. And I'm like,
but they're using
why do you guys have this phosphate problem here? Like where like nitrates aren't going up, but your phosphates are out of control all the time, and you keep trying to lower them down. I shouldn't say out of control because they're in control with the phosphate E, but why do you have to use this additive to help that? It's because there's so much phosphate in calcium reactor media.
Oh man, the media. So we've found calcium reactor media that seemingly has zero phosphate or adds very, very little. But I think the media they're using and the media that we had on here, 800 times the amount of phosphate. So now you're talking about, is your calcium reactor media giving you trace elements? Some, but not to the degree that you can get with Part C and A and K from Tropic Marin as a complete trace element solution. You're adding phosphate in, lots of phosphate in. It's complicated. It's all this gears and things that can fail. Like, at what point was that simple and stable?
Yeah, so this is one of those pieces where if we're trying to find that balance before what worked at the store and what worked at home, and a normal average type tank, two-part.
Yeah. Easy.
End of story.
Yep.
All right. So So next one was, what do corals eat? That was episode 15, actually.
Yeah. Feeding the
And
corals.
This was actually the most difficult thing to try to replicate in this hybrid method. It's that thing we were talking about earlier where at WWC there's an alarm every hour, ding, go feed the tank.
Yep. And they're there 7 days a week.
Yeah, and it's frozen food, their homemade food they put in there. And the idea is the food feeds the corals, but also the poo from the waste of the fish, because fish's digestive tract is really poor. So a lot of what they're really doing is just kind of like taking that food,
Processing it, yeah.
processing it into smaller particles that kind of blow up in the water.
Yep.
And so the corals are just in there trying to capture organics that are nutrient rich, and they still are. So how do you do that at home, man? Like, tried it with auto feeders. It really wasn't the same with dry food.
No.
You can do it with dosing pumps and additives, but we never really replicated the on the hour,
portion.
by the hour,
Yeah.
super heavy in, heavy out.
Yeah. And you can, there's a couple ways to mitigate that, I guess, in a home environment. A more varied and diverse diet. So whether like our DIY reef chili is probably all of the things that you might need for a jam-packed coral. It's got liquid aminos and all these really small particles, and like the reef chili that goes in there. All of the stuff that can be captured by the coral for that, what is it, that other 10%. Or we also do the KZ bottle. So we started doing KZ back on the 160, and now we've implemented it on all these other tanks where the fish are getting their normal diet stuff, but we come behind with blue bottles and amino acids and coral foods and coral vitalizers and all this other stuff, and we also broadcast feed the tank too. Yeah.
Yeah, so this is one of the pieces that I picked up. So if you get your elements and pH right, you're going to see skeletal growth skyrocket.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And that might be one of the reasons why the 750 actually doesn't grow as fast, is in this case we're using a 2-part, which elevates the pH. In that case we're using a calciumeter, which decreases the pH. Right?
Yeah, sure.
We all know how that'll affect the calcification of the coral, right? So now the part that I really brought home, was talking to Josh, was when he talks about coral nutrition and feeding them, he's talking about protein, 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 protein.
Yep.
Why? Because the tissue on the coral is protein-based, right?
Yeah.
So if I'm going to grow the skeleton really fast, I'm going to have to provide the ability for the coral to grow its tissue and protein
just as
really
fast,
right?
Yep.
All right, and so I totally get it. And he's like, yeah, super thin tissue, sign of low protein, low color. And one of the ways that we can solve that really quickly, and you see that, is amino acids. And so he used the Brightwell coral amino, and he's like, yeah, dude, it totally turns these corals all the way around.
Yeah.
So we saw it. We saw it in the pH test, where we saw 50% more growth doing 8.3.
Yes.
Right?
And then we came around after that and did
they look like crap.
Yeah, and we did a second test where we just kept those same pH levels and started dosing coral aminos to both of them, and there was the turning point.
So there's 2 different Investigate series, months long. One of them definitively showed that it calcifies faster at a higher pH, but man, the tissue looks like crap.
It did.
It's super thin
Brown,
and unhealthy.
thin, yeah.
Brown. We add the coral amino.
For another test.
And amino acids, for those who don't know, are the building blocks of proteins. So it's a lot easier for the coral to turn those nutrients into actual protein-based tissue. And I would later learn that most corals actually have adapted ways to absorb protein or amino acids right through their tissue. Right? They actually have a mechanism for that built into their tissue. So very interesting in that fact. But it was true. He told us, man, you take the 6 corals, the thin corals, you put the amino acid, we watch them come back to life. We showed it in video. You absolutely saw it too. So I don't know. So that was a big piece of that. It was very hard to replicate this thing. And I'm going to tell you that, again, we haven't found the exact methodology per se that you found to one-for-one replace hourly foods. But I'm going to tell you, for me,
there's tweaks you can make.
I've found adding amino acids specifically to the tank is providing adequate nutrition for the coral to produce its protein-based tissue. And I say that not because I can definitively prove it, other than The corals look awesome when I do. You don't see the thin tissues, and the ones that were thin instantly become not thin. And it's one of those things where in a matter of 3 weeks, you can see the whole thing turn around.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
So I don't know if it's anecdotal, man. For me, I believe 100%.
It's another thing that you would tell your grandma to do.
Yes. Sweet Elaine, I tell you to do that. All right. So in that spirit, the next one was water changes. So for those of you who don't know, for big kid, like they have a bin. They walk around, do 10% water changes weekly without fail. Happens every time. Employee does it.
They do not skip it. Yep.
Yep. So here we put it on auto water changes, and I think this one was actually more aggressive because there was no filtration. So I think it was doing 3% daily, which is a lot more than 10% weekly.
Yeah.
But like, you know what? Nobody's arguing about the result. So it did more, and we were compensating for the fact that the filtration was really weak on this tank, but worked out.
Yeah. The 750 though.
Yeah, I think again, awesome filtration. Auto water changes, roller mat in there, super huge skimmer.
Struggled.
It was starving for nutrients in that environment,
Yeah,
man.
that's
So, now looking back, I would have scaled a lot of the filtration back to meet that need.
Yeah, but the water changes being the ultimate equalizer for any issues that go wrong and stuff like that too. So, would I entertain the no water change conversation again? Personally, nope. I will forever do water changes, whether they're going to be automatic or manual.
All right, next one. This one, I actually had some hot debates with
with WWC.
Yeah, with both Victor and Josh, right?
Yeah. Because even you said, even if we gave it to you for free, would you use it? He said no.
Okay, so that was actually quiet. I'm going to throw Josh under the bus. He's going to be in big trouble. This is years ago, so maybe not. But like, if I asked Victor, man, if I gave you a controller for free, if we gave you Apex for free, would you use it? No, I stay in tune with the tank. I don't need any unnecessary gadgets, whatever. And then when I talked to Josh, he's like, if you gave it to me for free, don't tell Vic, but yes.
I'll take 5 of them.
If you gave it to me for free, I put it on here. And he's like, but I probably wouldn't use all the features. But I definitely want to know when something's going wrong.
Yeah,
the temperature's off.
Yeah.
I want an alarm to go off, because if I come back here, like, I don't think he actually said these words, but like, dude, if he nuked one of those tanks, man, job's at risk.
Yeah.
Right? Maybe not 1, but 2, definitely, right? So he doesn't want to be that person who shows up and has to explain to Vic why the tank's dead.
Yeah.
So as that person, I want to know when, I've overdosed chemistry, when temperature's wrong, when,
things aren't connected, pumps die, all of these things.
Yeah.
Power outage, the whole 9.
I think that was the evolution of the conversation for me.
Where it's like control versus monitoring.
Yeah, forget the control. I know there's the control freak aspect of it. Instantaneously will fix everything, and it will do all of that stuff.
This, yeah.
But when I finally had a conversation with Vic, man, I was like, dude, really, man? If the pH, something happened, the pH hit that calcium reactor, went crazy, and it hit 7.2. How fast would you want to know about it? Well,
immediately.
The problem is like, he's got a whole team of employees that are doing that, making sure that he doesn't have to worry about that.
There are some.
But if it was, man, the answer is I want to know fast. And so for me, that was the piece about the monitoring. And I'm going to tell you, this is why I believe this 100% wholeheartedly, because we had to actually go through this exercise today. Yep. Would these 2 tanks exist if we didn't have monitors on them?
Given the home and work environment, it's for a business like WWC, maybe, and they have been without one. But for us at home and average hobbyists,
I mean, literal. We know for sure these tanks would have failed.
Yeah, we had like 3 to 4 cases where if we didn't have the Apex to monitor, these would have died.
Yeah, so I had a couple of them on here. There are many times where this specific room has a heat and a cooling issue, where the thermostat's in the other room and the cooling, but like the whole building has this problem. We can't seem to solve it.
Summertime.
And so there's a sign on my door that says keep the damn door open, right? Otherwise it gets too hot or too cold in here, and the cleaners often don't listen to it. And so there's been several times where the alarm's gone off, and we had to come in here at night or during the day,
nights, yeah,
and come and solve that thing, right?
Josh, good for Josh.
There's also been ATO problems. There's also been, this one had an alkalinity overdose, if you follow along.
Left the pump on. And
we turned the pump on to prime it and forgot it.
Yep.
Right?
Yep. Came back in the morning to super
Josh.
cloudy tank.
Yeah, our Josh. Came back, I came into work, man, and the tank was milk. I thought everything was dead. Right, and
did a massive, almost 100% water change.
We did 100% water change actually from the 750.
Yeah.
Right, and solved the problem instantaneously. But like Josh was already flying in because the alarm went off. If we were using a slightly different, if we would have used soda ash instead of bicarb, it would have notified us immediately
in the middle of the night. Yeah.
And better yet, a controller would have actually just turned it off.
Yes,
that's a good point.
Even better. But probably the biggest one, and we had to publicly air that one, was the GFCI failure for the outlet for the 750, where we actually didn't even know that happened. So the Apex, the monitoring didn't tell us, but luckily we had some employees in the back of the warehouse who walked by the tank and goes, something doesn't seem right here, and then started making the phone calls and the text messages for us to get in here. But there's like $5,000 loss of fish.
If we had turned on the power monitor.
If we had turned on the heartbeat, we would have known the instant, or actually not the instant, but it just bounces off the, am I getting connected? Am I getting connected? I haven't talked to my Apex. I haven't talked to it in a while. And now it's, okay, crisis mode. I haven't talked to your computer, your fish tank for a while. You should probably go check that out. Had we have done that, we probably would have saved a lot of fish lives. But we didn't. But it was a lesson learned.
This one too, actually.
And better backups.
This one here, remember we told you earlier that we started to see a lot of tissue loss from some of the corals in here because the gyre had slowed down. If we had the power monitoring on for the gyre at that point in time, an alarm would have gone off and said, hey, the gyre's consuming a lot less power than it should be. You should probably clean it, lazy. Right? And so we would have cleaned it. And now you might be saying, don't you guys preach all the time of power monitoring and all this stuff? Yeah, but we're also human. We got 8 million tanks here, and so we don't actually
to try to get every single outlet.
Every last thing. We try to preach the best to help everybody be the most successful, and then we miss things.
And try to remember to do it ourselves.
All right, but without fail, or without any question, I should say.
Yes.
If we didn't have monitoring on both of these tanks, both of them wouldn't be here.
They wouldn't be here today.
They wouldn't.
Nope.
At several points. Not just one, several points they wouldn't have existed, and it's because we're only here during 9 to 5. We're not here on weekends, and we're human. We make mistakes.
All the time.
Yeah.
Gosh.
Yeah. So that's a piece for monitoring, man. That I would really bring home.
Yeah, I mean, especially for that hybrid, melding the two together for the home hobbyist, we just don't have the luxury of being around our tanks 24/7.
By the way, at the end of today's episode, we got a really cool thing for subscribers.
Oh, he hinted it. He dropped it.
All right, so number 18, stability. All right, so stability was this thing that he talked about a lot. I didn't really get it. I understood what he's saying, but it's not a thing you can touch or say do. It's a thing, man. It's a mentality.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's that I now understand that I'm not maintaining this aquarium. I'm maintaining an ecosphere, biosphere of life. And that if I walked into your house and decided to change the temperature from 65 to 75 all the time, you'd go crazy.
Yeah,
right? You wouldn't be able to sleep, it'd affect your health, all kinds of different things would happen. If I took the amount of nutrition that you got in a day, and I force-fed you an enormous amount of light or nutrition one day, and then another day I decided that, man, you could only eat celery, I'd screw you up.
Well, right? You made the analogy one time of if I put you out in an igloo outside, you got used to eating in the winter, harvesting your food, you living in that condition, and just when you got used to that, I picked you up and I put you in the jungle, and now you have to adapt to that. When you just got adapted to that, we're going off to the desert and doing something else. There's no way I'd survive.
Most humans would be able to make the single adaptation to the igloo, to the desert, to the jungle, but if I keep switching it up on you, man, you're dead.
You're dead. Eventually.
I don't know. So here's what it really means, man, is stop messing with it. Keep your chemistry stable. Alkalinity specifically matters the most. So find your alkalinity and peg it. But also, really stability in that beginning, man, is that conversation about the biome and not letting it like get totally out of whack before you correct it. So use live rock if you can find it in a bare bottom. I still will use dry rock, but I'm going to use sand in my cases.
Yeah.
But like in this method, if you're going to use the WWC method with bare bottoms, use live rock or go to extreme lengths with dry rock to find ways to add biome to it.
Yes.
Because at beginning, the stability, it's the difference between the stability of that tank. When I say stability too, like I'm not talking about like this chemistry thing. Like stability, stable in this one meant no issues. That one meant constant blooms, it meant aptasia, it meant dinos, it meant like all kinds of just garbage. And every time we're trying to fix one of those things in garbage,
Something
man,
else.
it just sets off another thing.
Yep.
So stable chemistry and approaches. All right, number 19.
Episode
Fish
19?
with a purpose.
Fish with a
yeah,
purpose.
episode 19. Fish with a purpose.
Is there anything that we would change with this? I think this was probably. I think this this telling people about tangs and getting them first and telling them about the wrasses and what they can do for potential worms and bugs that end up in the system, which you never know unless you're quarantining everything. Filefish for those aptasia that might pop their head up someday. Giving everybody the permission, and it really changed the way I think about cleanup crew, what I consider a cleanup crew, is finding a utilitarian fish and putting them in there for the job that they're designed for.
Okay, so yes, all the algae ones, the tangs and all that kind of stuff,
Yes.
rabbitfish, stuff like that. But if I was gonna like really advise anybody, there was a couple other ones they really put in there. One was having those wrasses in there, the kind of like peck at stuff,
Yep.
6 lines, but they can be kind of mean, but
Yeah.
other similar things like that are always hunting the surface. And those things, you may end up with money-eating nudibranchs or flatworms or whatever,
Yes.
and never even know
They
because
were-
you have this thing in there constantly eating them before they become a problem.
Yes, and this is now, we experienced this just recently in the 160. We took out the fish that were actively feeding on acroating flatworms, and then we were watching the afflow, watching these other corals, and like, man, those look like bite marks. Man, those are acro-eating flatworms. And now we're on the recovery process of that and watching these same things, these same types of fish that we took out, we put them back, reintroduce them, and now watching everything go back to a balance. Something we were actually finding in the 750, some bite marks.
So I'd say before you put in the coral, put in something, a wrasse that actively goes after those things. Even things like a mandarin, when I wouldn't put that right away, but later on when the tank's established, going after some parasitic copepods, going after all those things, man, that can go over. If you have natural predators in there, you will probably have them, but you'll never even know. That filefish, the aptasia eating filefish, like that is a perfect one.
Oh,
You'll probably
crushed
add
aptasia.
aptasia, especially if you have like LPS corals. You'll probably add it, but you may never know.
Well, not only, there was an added benefit of one of them in the 160 that we have documented that filefish was eating the flatworms. Documented it. We saw them picking at the corals. We thought, oh, they're just picking at the dead tissue. But when we go to blow off the acro-eating flatworms, that little filefish sits there and waits. So,
Yeah. Fish with a purpose. They have jobs in your tank.
Don't skip
Put
that
them to
step.
work.
Don't skip that
So
step.
algae, but more than that as well. All right. So
All right.
So I got I got a special for you guys. It's kind of related to some of the stuff we're talking about today. Randy, if you're subscribed to our channel, Randy just sent it out, or did you?
I'm doing it right now.
Doing it right now. You're going to see it already. If you're not subscribed, subscribe. Otherwise, go hit the community tab on our site. But I'm going to share the end of story here, the final findings here of like what I would really change on it.
The hybrid method.
Okay.
Here we go.
The changes I would make to this, and there's only like really 3 here. That like after all the lessons, changes I make to the system is live rock, bare bottoms, or follow a different system.
Yeah.
If you're gonna do the WWC system, it means
Get
it's
live rock.
It means it's bare bottom. Get live rock or bust.
Yeah.
Right. More nutrition in food. find that heavy in and then heavy out, meaning protein in and then waste out, and do what you feel that matches that hour addition of protein. Amino acids and stuff like that, a really probably great solution for a home environment. We're not really around to do that. And water changes and filtrations to meet the needs of those foods. The one thing I'll tell you, how much should I feed? And the answer to that is, you should feed it enough that the corals all look awesome without having continually rising nitrate and phosphate.
Yeah.
All right. So if you're a subscriber, you've probably already seen the deal that just came out. If you're not, subscribe later.
Here it is. Here's how to find it.
Somebody shared it.
Video.
Oh, there's a little video here. You can find the community tab, and it's hidden right in here. Right there, that's where all the deals pop up.
The desktop, you'll find it under the community tab, or on your mobile, if you're subscribed, you'll find it in your subscription feed. Go take a look, see what is today's little deal.
And if you make it to the end of these, we feel like you deserve something special.
Yeah.
So there you go. Great deal today.
24 hours. All right, guys.
We'll see you next week.
See ya.